All right, this is a little less good quality, but my phone's acting up and it won't keep me online. It's giving me connection issues. So we're going to go forward. A quick recap on chapter 4, entitled Kamsa Begins His Persecutions. In the last chapter we heard how having Vasudev, in the last two chapters, Vasudev had brought Krishna to Gokul, swapped Krishna for, Yogamaya, and in the middle of the night, Yashoda was sleeping, Krishna's foster mother, and Vasudev swapped, put Krishna there. She was really tired from labor of giving birth. I want to improve the quality of the camera here. And she basically, thought, okay, that's this chapter. She realized it's Krishna who's born, and she forgot the fact that due to labor and the stress of that, she didn't realize she had given birth to a girl, and now it was a boy. So that's Krishna's illusory energy as well. And on the side of in the last chapter, on the side of Devaki and Vasudev, Kamsa came to see them. That was the last chapter, and he apologizes to them. Well, he first tries to kill the daughter, and she slips out of his hands and shows her form as 8-armed Durga, and warns him that Krishna has already been born elsewhere, and chastises him, and he's calling him a rascal and a fool, and he's then shocked and apologizes to Devaki and Vasudev, and then goes to bed. The next day, his friends, they influence him negatively, and that brings us to chapter 5. He decides to persecute the Brahmanas and kill all children born within 10 days. Now, what happened on the side of the foster parents of Krishna, Nanda and Yashoda? Today I decided to do something different and read it, the Krishna book. Let's see what do you guys think of that? There's a lot of nice details that are missed when I tell this overall story. So it's a smaller chapter, and I'm going to try and read this. It may go a few minutes over. Let's see how it goes. Now, although Krishna was the real son of Vasudeva and Devaki, because Kamsa's atrocious activities, Vasudev could not enjoy the birth ceremony of his son. But Nanda Maharaj, the foster father, celebrated the birth ceremony of Krishna very joyfully. The next day, it was declared in Gokul that a male child had been born to Yashoda. According to the Vedic custom, Nanda Maharaj called for learned astrologers and brahmanas to perform the birth ceremony. After the birth of a child, the astrologers calculate the moment of the birth and make a horoscope of the child's future life. Another ceremony that takes place after the birth of the child. The family members take baths and cleanse themselves and decorate themselves with ornaments and nice garments, and then they come before the child and the astrologer to hear the future life of the child. Nanda Maharaj and other members of the family dressed and sat down in front of the birthplace. All the brahmanas who were assembled there on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to the rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. All the demigods are also worshipped. Also, please text me if there's the quality of the sound or anything like that is problematic. I know the video isn't great. All the brahmanas who were assembled there on this occasion chanted auspicious mantras according to rituals, while the astrologers performed the birth ceremony. All demigods are also worshipped on this occasion, as well as the forefathers of the family. Nanda Maharaj distributed to the Brahmins 200,000 cows, which were all decorated with cloth and ornaments. He gave the Brahmanas not only cows in charity, but also hills of grain decorated with ornaments and golden bordered cloth. In the material world, we possess riches and wealth in many ways, but sometimes not in a very honest and pious ways, because that's the nature of accumulating wealth. According to Vedic injunctions, therefore, one should purify such wealth by giving cows and gold in charity to the Brahmanas. A newborn child is also purified by gifts of grain in charity. In this material world, it's to be understood that we are always living in a contaminated state. We therefore have to purify the duration of our lives, our possession of wealth, and ourself. We can purify the duration of our life by taking daily bath and cleansing the body inside and outside and accepting the 10 kinds of purificatory processes. By austerities, by worship of the Lord, and by distribution of charity, we can purify the possession of wealth. We can purify ourselves by studying the Vedas in order to understand the absolute truth and achieve self-realization. It is therefore stated in the Vedic literatures that by birth everyone is born a Shudra, that by accepting the purificatory process one becomes twice born, that by studying the Vedas one becomes a Vipra, which is the preliminary qualification of becoming a Brahmana, and that when one perfectly understands the absolute truth, he is called a Brahmana. And when the Brahmana reaches further perfection, he becomes a Vaishnava or a devotee. In Krishna's birth ceremony, all the assembled Brahmanas began to chant different kinds of Vedic mantras to invoke all good fortune for the child. There are different kinds of chanting known as Sutta, Magadha, Vandija, and Viruddhavali. I know that some terms will be going above and some terms go above my head too, like these different styles of chanting. Along with this chanting of mantras and songs, bugles and kettle drums are sounded outside the house. On this occasion, the joyous vibration could be heard in all the pasturing grounds and all the houses. Within and outside of the houses, there were varieties of artistic paintings done with rice pulp, and scented water was sprinkled everywhere, even on the roads and streets. Ceilings and roofs were decorated with different kinds of flags, festoons, and green leaves. The gates were made of green leaves and flowers. All the cows, bulls, and calves were smeared with a mixture of oil and turmeric and painted with minerals like red oxide, yellow clay, and manganese. They wore garlands of peacock feathers and were covered with nice colored cloths and gold necklaces. When all the ecstatic cowherd men heard that Nanda Maharaj, the father of Krishna, was celebrating the birth ceremony of his son, they became spontaneously joyful. They dressed themselves with very costly garments and ornamented their bodies with different kinds of earrings, necklaces, and wore great turbans on their heads. After dressing themselves in this gorgeous way, they took various kinds of presentations and thus approached the house of Nanda Maharaj. As soon as they heard that Mother Yashoda had given birth to a child, all the cowherd women became overwhelmed with joy. And they also dressed themselves with various kinds of costly garments and ornaments and smeared scented cosmetics on their bodies. As the dust on the lotus flower exhibits the exquisite beauty of the flower, all the gopis, cowherd women, that's in parentheses, so another way of calling gopis is cowherd women, applied the dust of kumkuma on their lotus-like faces. These beautiful gopis took their different presentations and very soon reached the house of Nanda Maharaj. Overburdened with their heavy hips and swollen breasts, the gopis could not proceed very quickly towards the house of Nanda Maharaj, but out of ecstatic love for Krishna, they proceeded as quickly as possible. Their ears were decorated with pearl earrings, their necks with jeweled lockets, their lips and eyes with different kinds of lipstick and ointment, and their hands with nice golden bangles. As they were very hastily passing over the stone road, the flower garlands which were decorating their bodies fell to the ground, and it appeared that a shower of flowers were falling from the sky. From the movement of the different kinds of ornaments on their body, they were looking still more beautiful. In this way, they all reached the house of Nanda Maharaj and blessed the child. Dear child, may you live long just to protect us. While they were blessing Krishna in this way, they offered a mixture of turmeric powder, oil, yogurt, milk, and water. They sprinkled this mixture not only on the body of child Krishna, but on all other persons who were present. Also, on that auspicious occasion, there were different bands of expert musicians playing. I have no music, but I should add now some music. When the coward men saw the pastimes of the coward women, they became very joyful and in response also began to throw yogurt, milk, clarified butter, and water upon the bodies of the gopis. Then both parties began to throw butter on each other's bodies. Nanda Maharaj, so Krishna's foster father, was also very happy to see the pastimes of the coward men and women, and he became very liberal in giving charity to the different singers who were assembled there. Some singers were reciting great verses from the Upanishads and Puranas. Some were glorifying the family ancestors, and some were singing very sweet songs. There were also many learned brahmanas present, and Nanda Maharaj, being very satisfied on this occasion, gave them different kinds of garments, ornaments, and cows in charity. It's important to note in this connection how wealthy the inhabitants of Vrindavan were simply by raising cows. All the coward men belonged to the Vaishya community, and their business was to protect the cows and cultivate crops. By their dress and ornaments, and by their behavior, it appears that although they were in a small village, they still were rich in material possessions. They possessed such an abundance of various kinds of milk products that they were throwing butter lavishly on each other's bodies without restriction. Their wealth was in milk, yogurt, clarified butter, and many other milk products, and by trading their agricultural products, they were rich in various kinds of jewelry, ornaments, and costly garments. Not only did they possess all these things, but they could give them away in charity lavishly, as did Nanda Maharaj. Thus Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, began to satisfy the desires of all men assembled there. I'm just going to light up my face a bit. It's a little dark, I realize. Let's see if this helps. Okay. A little funny. There we go. Thus Nanda Maharaj, the foster father of Lord Krishna, began to satisfy the desires of all the men assembled there. He respectfully received them and gave them in charity whatever they desired. The learned brahmanas, who had no other source of income, were completely dependent on the Vaishya community for their maintenance, and they received gifts on such festive occasions as birthdays and marriages. While Nanda Maharaj, worshipping Lord Vishnu on this occasion, was trying to satisfy all the people there, his only desire was that the newborn child Krishna would be happy. Nanda Maharaj had no knowledge that this child was the origin of Vishnu. He was praying to Lord Vishnu to protect him. Rohini Devi, the mother of Balaram, was the most fortunate wife of Vasudeva. She was away from her husband, yet just to congratulate Nanda Maharaj on the occasion of the birth ceremony of his son, Krishna, she dressed herself very nicely, wearing a garland, necklace, and other bodily ornaments. She appeared on the scene and moved hither and thither. According to the Vedic system, a woman whose husband is not at home does not dress herself very nicely. But although Rohini's husband was away, she still dressed herself very nicely on this occasion. From the opulence of the birth ceremony of Krishna, it is very clear that at that time Vrindavan was rich in every respect. Because Lord Krishna took birth in the house of King Nanda, and Mother Yasoda, the goddess of fortune, was obliged to manifest her opulence in Vrindavan. It appeared that Vrindavan had already become a site for the pastimes of the goddess of fortune. After the birth ceremony, Nanda Maharaj decided to go to Mathura to pay the annual tax to the government of Kamsa. Before leaving, he called for the able coward men of the village and asked them to take care of Vrindavan in his absence. When Nanda Maharaj arrived in Mathura, Vasudeva got the news and was very eager to congratulate his friend. He immediately went to the place where Nanda Maharaj was staying. When Nanda saw Vasudeva, which that's the title of this chapter, the meeting of Nanda and Vasudeva. Vasudeva is Krishna's birth father, and Nanda is, without knowing it, is Krishna's foster father, because Vasudeva went and exchanged, put Krishna in his care and took Nanda's daughter. When Nanda saw Vasudeva, he felt that he had regained his life. Nanda, overwhelmed with joy, immediately stood up and embraced Vasudeva. Vasudeva was received very warmly and offered a nice place to sit. Anxious about his two sons who had been put under the protection of Nanda without Nanda's knowledge, Vasudeva inquired about them with great anxiety. Both Balaram and Krishna were the sons of Vasudeva. Balaram was transferred to the womb of Rohini, Vasudeva's own wife, but Rohini was kept under the protection of Nanda Maharaj. Krishna was personally delivered to Yashoda and exchanged with her daughter. Nanda Maharaj knew that Balaram was the son of Vasudeva, but he did not know that Krishna was also Vasudeva's son. He thought Krishna was his son. Vasudeva, of course, was aware of this fact and inquired very eagerly about both Krishna and Balaram. Vasudeva then addressed Nanda, "My dear brother, you were old and very anxious to get a son, and yet you had none. Now, by the grace of the Lord, you're fortunate to have a very nice son. I think that this incident is very auspicious for you. Dear friend, I was imprisoned by Kamsa." So Vasudeva, who's the actual father of Krishna, is addressing Nanda, saying, you're so fortunate to have such a son. And he's talking about his own son. "Dear friend, I was imprisoned by Kamsa and now I'm released. Therefore, this is another birth for me. I had no hope of seeing you again, but by God's grace I can see you." In this way, Vasudeva indirectly expressed his anxiety about Krishna. Krishna was sent in incognito to the bed of Mother Yashoda, and after Nanda very pompously celebrated Krishna's birth ceremony, he went to Mathura. He happened to go to Mathura. So Vasudeva was very much pleased and said, "This is a new birth for me." He never expected that Krishna would live because all his other sons had been killed by Kamsa. Vasudeva continued, and my battery is dying, so I'll have to take a moment. We're almost done with this chapter, but I will have to take a second. All right. So Vasudeva continued, "My dear friend, it's very difficult for us to live together. Although we have our family and relatives, sons and daughters, but by nature's way, we are generally separated from one another. The reason for this is that every living entity appears on this earth under different pressures of fruitive activities. Although they assemble together, there is no certainty of remaining together for a long time. According to one's fruitive activities, one has to act differently and thereby be separated. For example, many plants and creepers are floating on the waves of the ocean. Sometimes they come together, and sometimes they separate forever. One plant goes one way, and another plant goes another. Similarly, our family assembly may be very nice while we are living together, but after some time, in the course of the waves of time, we are separated." The purport of this expression by Vasudeva is this: although he had 8 sons born in the womb of Devaki, unfortunately, they were all gone. He could not even keep his one son, Krishna, with him. Vasudeva was feeling his separation, but he could not express the real fact. "Please tell me about the welfare of Vrindavan," he said. "You have many animals. Are they happy? Are they getting sufficient grass and water? Please also let me know whether the place where you are now living is undisturbed and peaceful." This inquiry was made by Vasudev because he was very anxious about Krishna's safety. He knew that Kamsa and his followers were trying to kill Krishna by sending various kinds of demons. They had already resolved that all children born within 10 days of the birthday of Krishna should be killed. Because Vasudev was so anxious about Krishna, he inquired about the safety of his residents. He also inquired about Balaram and his mother Rohini, who were entrusted to the care of Nanda Maharaj. Vasudev also reminded Nanda Maharaj that Balaram did not know his real father. He knows you as his father, and so that's Vasudev addressing Nanda, saying, Balaram doesn't know that I'm who his real father is. He thinks you are his father. And now you have another child, Krishna, and I think you are taking very nice care of both of them. It's also significant that Vasudev inquired about the welfare of Nanda Maharaj's animals. The animals, and especially the cows, were protected exactly in the manner of one's children. Vasudev was a Kshatriya and Nanda Maharaj was a Vaishya. It is the duty of the Kshatriyas to give protection to the citizens, and it's the duty of the Vaishyas to give protection to the cows. The cows are as important as the citizens. Just as the human civil citizens should be given all kinds of protection, so the cows also should be given full protection. Vasudev continued to say that the maintenance of religious principles, economic development, and the satisfactory execution of meeting the demands of the senses depend on cooperation among relatives, nations, and all humanity. Therefore, it is everyone's duty to see that his fellow citizens and the cows are not put into difficulty. One should see the peace and comfort of his fellow man and the animals. One should see to the peace and comfort of his fellow man and the animals. The development of religious principles, economic development, and sense gratification can then be achieved without difficulty. Vasudev expressed his sorrow due to not being able to give protection to his own sons born of Devaki. He was thinking that religious principles, economic development, and satisfaction of his senses were therefore all lost. Upon hearing this, Nanda Maharaj replied, My dear Vasudev, I know that you are very much aggrieved because the cruel King Kamsa has killed all your sons born of Devaki. Although the last child was a daughter, Kamsa could not kill her, and she has entered into the celestial planets. So, with the 8 arms, Durga, she left to the celestial planets. My dear friend, do not be aggrieved. We are all being controlled by our past unseen activities. Everyone is subjected to his past deeds, and one who is conversant with the philosophy of karma and its reactions is a man in knowledge. Such a person will not be aggrieved at any incident, happy or miserable. Vasudev then replied, My dear Nanda, if you have already paid the government taxes, then return soon to your place, because I think that there may be some disturbances in Gokul. After the friendly conversation between Nanda Maharaj and Vasudev, Vasudev returned to his home, and Nanda Maharaj and the other cowherd men who had come to Mathura to pay their taxes also returned home. So we've got a few more minutes, and yeah, I wanted to say that there's a few things that I could explain, like the terms Vaishya, Kshatriya, Brahmana, and Shudra. So these are the 4 orders of Varnashram, which was a social strata that was working in the past. This social strata was actually created by Krishna. So it is, Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita that he's the creator of this social strata. And the Brahmanas are the head of society, they're the teachers, and they subsist of donations or gifts from others. So they're not like employed, and they're at the mercy of specifically the Vaishyas. And so next below of the Brahmanas are the Kshatriyas, and they're the rulers, managers, soldiers. Well, soldiers would be Shudras, but they are there to protect humanity. That's what this chapter told us, that they protect the people. And then the Vaishyas, they're the business class, and they're also the class which protects the cows. So Krishna, was born as a son of a kshatriya, Vasudeva, and then his foster parents were Vaishyas, and then Shudras would be the musicians there, anybody employed, soldiers, musicians, and they would also subsist off like the donations we heard in this chapter, that gifts, at a party, the musicians, they would receive sometimes the gifts of garments, jewelry, or etc., as a way of payment. And I wonder what else you guys think. Just writing hi on the chat, see if anybody else can chat here. Don't know about this chat working. So anyways, we could end early. Thank you so much for joining me. This has been a different experience. I read this chapter. I think there's a lot of nice things inside, details, and let's see what seems best going forward, whether I should read or whether I should try and summarize and storytell. Let me know. And good night. Thank you so much for listening.